Hi, I'm Tim Berglund, and this is Cassandra 3. DataStax Enterprise 5 incorporates Cassandra 3, which brings a lot of improvements. I want to highlight just 3 of them: the improved storage engine, the materialized view feature, and the changes in hint handoff and storage. If you used Cassandra in the early days, you may remember people talking about the data model as a hash table of hash tables. The outer hash table was the row key, or what we now call the partition key. The inner hash table was just a group of cells that you could store inside that row or that partition. That data model was faithfully represented in the old Thrift API. Well, it's been a long time now that people have been using CQL instead of Thrift. And that abstraction doesn't really make sense anymore. And in fact, as a storage engine, it imposes some overhead in the way people use data with CQL. The new storage engine has been designed to model the CQL interface and the CQL abstraction a little more faithfully. For example, with the old data model, that hash table of hash tables, in terms of data structures, that's really what it was. It was an outer hash table. The value of that hash table was itself a key value pair of strings and byte arrays. The new data structure, if you were to think of it as a data structure, still would look like a hash table on the outside, where the key is the partition key, and the inner structure is kind of a hash table, but the key is the clustering key, and the value is a collection of rows. You can think of it something like that. So the data structure in the storage engine itself really more faithfully represents the way we model data in CQL. There's also less repeated data. For example, column names aren't stored over and over again inside a partition. They're just stored once. So it's a little more efficient and updated to match the way people actually use the database in real applications. If you use relational databases at all, you're probably familiar with the idea of materialized views. In Cassandra, a materialized view is something similar. It's as if there's a query that you define, and Cassandra keeps that up to date. People use this in situations where you might have denormalized data. You might have made several tables that have slightly different views of the data, and of course made copies of it between those tables, as you normally do in Cassandra data modeling. This now is a feature where Cassandra will do some of that housekeeping for you. You can define the materialized view. You could define that denormalized view of the data, and it will handle that when you change the table that you've defined the view on. Just a little bit of automation to make your life easier and to pull some of that work out of the client-side application. Always a good thing. Finally, improved hint storage. Now, it's worth a quick refresher on exactly what hints are. When a coordinator node is trying to forward a write to a replica, and it knows that replica is down, Gossip has said that replica is down, don't bother writing to it, what it'll do is it'll store a hint locally inside the coordinator. Then when that replica comes back up, it'll hand off the hint to the replica. Now, that little bit of inconsistency or entropy in the cluster would have been repaired later on, but hints are this nice mechanism to keep that entropy from forming in the first place. It's a good thing. The way they've worked historically is that hints have been stored in Cassandra itself. In the system key space, there were tables to help manage this data. So they had to go through the write path and just be managed as normal Cassandra data, which is normally a good thing, but in the case of hints was a little bit of overkill. Now hints are stored directly in the file system. And when they're handed off, they're not handed off row by row, but in segments, in chunks of data that are moved from the coordinator to the node that has just come back up in a much more efficient way. So those are just a few of the things that have been improved in Cassandra 3. It's a major update and one that should add a lot of value to DataStax Enterprise 5.